Welcome to The Man Who Woke Up the Buddha. This is Season 3, Episode 2, The Wings to Awakening. Previously, Sid's nephews, Willie and Junior, along with Junior's alleged girlfriend Cindy, built a large aviary in the living room at Sid's house, as he read up on the Buddhist Pāli Canon, Zoe read up on parrot behavior, and Di found a way to rise above it all. Kesey came into the kitchen quietly, slipped off his shoes, and, when Di looked up, put his finger to his lips and lowered his backpack gently to the floor. It had a huge front flap that was covered with sewn patches. Imagine, in psychedelic colors. Jesus is just all right with just underlined. And, of course, make love, not war, scrawled white on black. With his hair receding in front and a single braid down his back, Kesey looked like a time traveler from the 60s. "Where is he?" Kesey asked, sitting down at the kitchen table. Di pointed toward the closed living room door. "What's he doing?" Kesey whispered back. "Meditating, he says," she said quietly. An extraordinarily loud, almost choking snore came from the living room. Kesey nodded. Di pointed toward her coffee. Kesey shook his head. She pointed toward the backpack and mouthed, "Moving in?" He grinned. "I wish." "Me too," she whispered. "I need reinforcements." "Pāli?" she asked, pointing at the backpack. He grinned. "Go on in," she said quietly. "He's exhausted from waiting for you. It's like Christmas morning for him." She lifted up the latest edition of Parrot's magazine that Sid had left on the kitchen table. Kesey went over to the backpack and unzipped the top corner. A little green head with a bit of yellow appeared, accompanied by what sounded like a baby cooing and whimpering at the same time. Kesey bent down and whispered something. The answer sounded like a question. "Simple?" So Kesey picked up the backpack, walked to the living room, and opened the door. When he saw the aviary, he stood completely still and was at a loss for words. Sid was also at a loss for words, but only because he was fast asleep in his tilting, swiveling orange chair that was just inside the door instead of its traditional place, in front of the Palladian window. Because in front of the Palladian window was the parrot mansion that Willie Jr. and Junior's girlfriend, or maybe not Cindy, had built the day before. The screen door that opened to the porch in summer wasn't in its traditional place either, because Junior had used it for the entrance to the aviary. There was also a framed screened window to its left. Maxfield, too, was on Sid's lap, which, Kesey realized, could be problematic, although he suspected the cat would be more frightened of Pāli than vice versa. Kesey slowly unzipped the backpack, reached his hand in, and emerged with his beloved Amazonian sidekick. When he put Pāli on his shoulder, the parrot turned his head toward Sid, swirled it around to the aviary, and back to Sid. For a few seconds, he was completely still, and at a loss for words. Then he turned his head toward Kesey and nibbled on his ear. When Kesey turned his head and whispered something in his ear in return, Pāli cried out joyously, "Sid Buddha!" Sid opened his eyes, turned to look at Pāli, and without missing a beat said, "Good afternoon, Pāli. It's a pleasure to have you here. There's your room. Please let the front desk know if you need anything." "Sid Buddha!" "Does he have dietary restrictions?" Di asked, coming up behind Kesey. "Well, he's a fruitarian and nutarian," Kesey said. "Pretty much anything Sid would eat, drink, or smoke, Pāli shouldn't. Chocolate, caffeine, alcohol, anything salty." He looked sternly at Sid. "Strictly no edibles. No avocados either." "That's okay. I don't eat avocados," Sid shrugged. "You should eat them," Kesey laughed, "and Pāli shouldn't. Oh, and a little meat for a treat, but he hates crackers. Make sure the kids know." Pāli found the conversation boring. Plus, he noticed the ball of orange fur on Sid's lap. It seemed to be asleep, but in an abundance of caution, he hopped off Kesey's shoulder, gave half a flap, caught some air, and landed on top of the aviary with an alarm sound and a shriek of, "Cat! Cat!" Not like he was afraid, but like this was a danger that others might not be aware of. At the sound, Max, too, leaped off Sid's lap in terror, pirouetted to the ground, and skedaddled. Pāli started looking through the top of the wire mesh into the aviary, as if nothing had happened. Kesey noticed one other strange thing about the scene. "Di?" he questioned. "Where are all Sid's impressionable young disciples?" Zoe already has a PhD in parrot behavior, Di explained, and told her siblings and cousins that Pāli needs as much peace and quiet as possible for the first couple of days to get settled. Then what the hell is he doing here? Kesey asked, pointing at Sid. Excellent question, the Buddha thought. He hadn't seen Pāli in many a lifetime, and then in a much different form. So the idea of him being left alone with Sid was troubling. Di, whose awareness of what someone wanted or needed extended to all life forms, shrugged and went into the kitchen to cut up an apple. Roshi Kesey, Sid said. The use of the Zen master honorific put Kesey on guard. Yes, Your Holiness? I'm having some issues with this Buddha thing, Sid acknowledged. The feeling is mutual, the Buddha smiled. Di walked in and brought a piece of apple over to Pāli. Apple! Yay! Well put, Pāli, Sid said, smiling at the parrot, as he carefully pecked the piece of apple out of Di's hand. So you were talking about issues, your beyonditude? Kesey asked. Sid held up his copy of the Pāli Canon. It seems to me that my teaching became a game of telephone shortly after my death. A game that has caused no end of confusion over the last, 2,500 years or so. Telephone, Kesey asked. Hearing the word, Pāli cocked his head and said, Hello? Hello? Who dis? That's what we're trying to determine, Pāli. The thing is, it was unclear whether he was talking to the parrot or Kesey. There are entire cases of books in Johnny D's domain that claim to be either things I said or so-called interpretations of what I said. So, Kesey said tentatively. I just called it like I saw it, Sid said, sounding exasperated. Then the people around me started calling it the way they thought I had said I saw it, and then people started calling it the way they thought those other people said they saw it, and so on, round and round, for does Pāli do math? Not his strong suit, Kesey answered. Well, this went on for 100 generations, passed on like a game of telephone. Hello? Hello? Who dis? Now you're just being cute, Pāli. This is a serious discussion, Sid said sternly. Pāli lowered his head as if chastened. Anyway, Kesey, what started as me saying something like, this war thing is really weird. I wonder what would happen if people just chilled out. Evolved into people sitting around for hours doing nothing but watching their breath go in and out. Which is a fine way to chill out, but, when bombs are going off, it's a little dangerous. Bombs going off, Kesey asked? As I remember, you were a conscientious objector. Not that conscientious. High draft number. Never mind, that's ancient history. You get the idea. Still, allegedly enlightened one, Kesey said, how do you propose ending war? I didn't say anything about ending it. I just said it was weird, and I was curious if it would change things if people just chilled out. Good point, the Buddha thought. This is the very reason teachings are better written in the sand than those cast in stone. Rules written in sand are better than ones cast in stone, Sid said. The ones in sand are blown away in the mists of time, so people can move on. That's pretty profound, Sid. What got into you? I am vibrating more harmoniously with my Buddha nature, Sid explained. That's what that weird sound is, the Buddha chuckled to himself. But he actually does seem to be making sense, he thought cautiously. Look, Kesey, it's simple, Sid said, holding up the book. It says here, right on the cover, that Pāli's canon is known as the Wings of Awakening. But our feathered friend here knows more about awakening than you'll find in this whole book. Yay, Pāli! Pāli cried enthusiastically. Sid closed his eyes as if his rich excuse for a Dharma talk had taken everything out of him. Kesey waited a minute and, seeing Sid was completely out, walked over and took Pāli off the top of the parrot mansion and set him on one of the many perches inside, in easy reach of food and water, nodding in approval at the nut cake that Di had undoubtedly put there, and taking out the gummy that Sid had undoubtedly put there. Then he gently closed the screen door. Bye, Pāli. See you soon. Take care of Sid. Bye, Kesey? Pāli chirped, staring at Kesey as he walked away. You're not staying for dinner? Di asked as Kesey took his vintage jeans jacket with even more patches off the chair. No. He paused. He didn't really know why. He just had to go. Okay, Di said quizzically, standing up to give him a big hug. Well, take care of him. Sid or Pāli? Don't worry, Kesey said. Pāli knows how to take care of himself. And, by the way, he came to our meditations sometime, so he'll occasionally shout out, Satori! Or, quiet! Things like that. I warned Sid, she laughed. Kesey walked back to the living room door to look at Pāli one more time. The parrot was still sitting unmoving on the perch, head down. "See you, buddy," Kesey said with a wave. "Bud? Bud?" Pāli chirped hopefully. "Hello? Hello?" His voice skipping, hesitant. Pāli stared at the door as Kesey quietly closed it behind him. "Kesey? Come back!" Couple of notes. I'm calling Pāli he. It's hard to sex a parrot. Sometimes you can only do it with the DNA test. So Pāli is a guy, for now, but that's kind of arbitrary, and could change if the spirit moves him, her, them, or me. And if you didn't know, Satori is the Zen Buddhist phrase for enlightenment. Again, paid annual subscribers receive a free paperback of each season for reference, or to catch up, or, because, like me, counterintuitively for someone publishing online, still prefer reading on paper instead of screen. Thanks for listening to The Man Who Woke Up the Buddha.